Record.
Pew, pew, pew.
All right. Well, here we are.
I actually like the microaggressions through microtransactions better.
You like
It's
it?
less, and mine wasn't even like passive aggressive. It was just like,
You were like, if you disagree with me, you're a crybaby. Yeah, that's a
well,
little on the nose.
so and patrons for like I'm not target specifically. I am not saying that if you disagree with me in regards to microtransactions. What I am referring to though is a very specific phenomena, and we'll talk about it more. And
Gotcha.
but it's like the clutching of pearls around Dragon's Dogma's microtransactions. Okay, because
Gotcha.
I think there is a conversation to be had about microtransactions and the natures, and we will like when we actually get into
Which
the
is
episode
why
proper.
we're
That's
having a
why we're going to be
conversation
talking about it tonight.
about.
But what the weird thing is that the microtransactions in Dragon's Dogma are so inconsequential. It's like these are the same types of microtransactions that they had in Monster Hunter, the same types that they had in the Resident Evil games. It's
Okay.
like it's some in-game items that don't. Yes.
In-game items that don't.
I'll take care of it. We'll
So
take care. But it's like these aren't necessarily exploitative. They're fairly minor, and it's just but the weird overlap is that it seems to there's a bunch of PC gamers that Dragon's Dogma is not running great on their rig, and so they're all butthurt about it. And that's not a very nice term, I guess. But they're all in their feelings about the fact that Dragon's Dogma isn't perfectly optimized for PC. Well, I hate to tell the PCMR crowd, the fact that you have a $5,000 machine and 6 million different configurations of the hardware and software does not make it easy to optimize. The beautiful thing about console gaming is that they optimize for one thing and it works. And it's like, yes, technically you should be able to run it better, but it's like, so what I think is it's actually like, it's just a reason for a bunch of PC master racist babies to get all in their feelings. And at which point I just cackle maniacally. And I call them the crybaby battalions because there's really probably only 1,000 of them in the world completely. And they're just a bunch of whiny crybabies on the internet. And I will make fun of them to their face. And like I said, I think there's a conversation to be had about microtransactions, but frankly, I think the non-controversy surrounding the Dragon's Dogma stuff is exactly that. It's like, this is not the like these are not the microtransactions you're actually looking for, or you actually want to have a conversation about. Like there's other ways to talk about exploitation and things like that. Pricing. We're going to talk about that. That's something that I have talked about many a time in different forms and formats, and probably even on this podcast from time to time. But it's like, this is not a hill to die on. And so anyways, that's
preview.
And frankly, like my tone is a little, as a general rule, I am a little brusque. BRUSQUE. I think I'm using that word correctly.
Oh, there you go. Interesting.
I don't suffer fools. And I think this is a very foolish thing to like get up in arms. It's very much like most internet controversies, where it's a very vocal minority is sort of in their feelings, and because they have an outsized influence on a digital platform, like it becomes a big deal. And this is a situation where I think, like, as Christians in particular, we can have a much more meaningful and sort of robust conversation around this stuff. So but yeah, I can be a little bit, I don't know. I don't think I'm that spicy. I'm just kind of like,
okay, but I think too, I think that's kind of what we have going for us also, is that we're different. Like, I'm
Yeah.
naturally more of a peacemaker, and so it's harder for me to
And
come
I've got
off
no problem
with a
kicking
harder
people
edge.
in the shins.
At times, right? Not all the
Yeah.
time,
I'm not
because
I
I
don't
mean,
do it
you
like
can call
I
me out on
don't do
stuff
it
too.
I don't do it like unwarranted.
Mhm.
It's like it's not like I'm like I just like to like I'll tell you what, as
Right, yeah,
somebody
that's true. Yeah, you back it up.
as well that and as somebody who does like there is like I think one of the dangers of being a personality like mine is that you can kind of see the forest for the trees and you can see the spade for a spade and you can call BS. And
Mhm.
so pretty soon it's just really easy to do that all the time and be
Yeah.
hypercritical. And that is something that I have to fight against and struggle with. That frankly, especially when that leads me down simple paths, like I have to kill that.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, it's but I think at the same time it has its place. Just
Yeah.
like
Oh,
I
for
think
sure.
there's
Yeah.
like a lot of like hand wringing about like and here's the thing is like I'm guilty of it. Like I can be the tone police. And I think
Hmm.
there's also like a whole lot of like hand wringing about tone police. But like what I would say is like I have no problems and this is like the politics conversation that we had, I feel like a few months ago or whatever, where I said I don't have a problem punching left or right. Like if
Mhm.
you're too progressive, too liberal, like I'm going to call that garbage exactly what it is, garbage. And if you're too hard right, if you're like bordering in like fascistic kind of nonsense, I'm going to be like, nope, we don't go there either.
Mhm.
Like it's like and I think like that's the thing is like that that is frankly a kind of uncomfortable position to be in sometimes. And
Sure.
yeah. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with this. So this isn't what we're talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about other stuff. But let's let's save some like let's give the bulk of our energy
Mhm.
to the main
To the episode.
podcast,
I
to,
like it.
to the episode. This is a
Yeah.
little bit of preamble for you guys.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then we can just get be sleepy and loopy for the bro hang.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Yeah, we're gonna save the talk about the pigeon dating sim until the main episode or until the actual episode, not just pre-show.
That game is so weird. Um,
Dude, when I downloaded the audio and I was, editing at least, first pass and all that stuff, I'm just like, "Oh my goodness," because I had heard of that game before and I was like that
it's
I would not have ever thought you would want to play that, but okay.
well,
And of course, I'm
and
sure Paul had visceral reactions, which I'm surprised he
uh,
didn't post about,
eh,
you know?
he's probably played weirder stuff. I don't know. Um,
Uh,
probably not. I don't know. But
a
like,
pigeon dating sim is
here's
pretty
the
weird,
thing:
dude.
is it's short
Okay.
and it's like
And I
it's
just wanted the points.
yeah, pretty much. And it's like I had it in my backlog, and there was a guy that I listened to.
Okay.
There were three things. So
Mhm.
I looked up to how long to beat, and
Yeah.
it's short. Like I think
Yeah.
for completion, they're saying like maybe 8 hours.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there's that. It was in my backlog because it had been a PS Plus game years ago.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. And lastly, there's a guy that I listened to that Travis Northrup, the guy Thai guy Travis. I reference him sometimes. He's one of my
Okay.
favorite reviewers. He freelances over at IGN, and I think he's one of the best voices, basically in games journalism when it comes to reviews.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't even agree with all of his takes or his opinions or his positions. I'm just
Sure.
saying I think overall he's got one of the best approaches to reviewing games out there. Um,
Okay.
but he was like he likes visual novels, and
Gotcha.
somebody in one of the shows that he's on asked him, and he said, oh yeah, like here's like he rattled off like a handful, and I
Mhm.
actually had, and How to Fool Boyfriend was one of them, and I have
Gotcha.
that. So I was like, well,
Yeah.
okay, like it's short, it's kind of like weird and dumb, and it's just
Mhm.
completely off my like that's like not even in my wheelhouse. So I was like, this is just like something different.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's not
Yeah.
just like
No,
this.
that's a good point.
It
That's a
was
good
like
reason to play.
there is a bit of a method to my madness, but
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask about, if he mentioned any Ace Attorney or Zero Escape games, and then I
Yes,
remembered those are not short games. Those are longer games.
those
I
are
was
longer games,
surprised.
but he stands for
Okay.
the Ace Attorney games. I don't know.
Okay.
I've
Okay.
never heard him reference the nonary games, but
Mhm.
I actually no. I think when he was rattling off that list, he might have mentioned the nonary games as well.
Okay.
Um, so Travis plays a lot of video games, and actually, like one of the things.
Okay.
So, and I actually meant to bring it up with you and John.
Mhm.
Um, there is an like I think I've told you who it was, but I haven't told the
Okay.
patrons. A
Mhm.
friend of mine
Mhm.
um recently challenged me to play some just awful games, like to
Mhm.
help recalibrate the scale of like what good versus bad actually is. And so there's a game that has a 38 on Metacritic,
Okay.
and it was
Okay.
$5 on PSN. And so
Okay.
I pulled the trigger on it. But here's the thing: it's like there's a part of me that like, and I meant to run it by you and John and patrons. You guys can feel free to weigh in on this. Should I take the point for acquisitions, or because that's like pretty much just like I'm going to be farming that for occasional content? Like, is that can I just count that as like a podcast acquisition game, and I just won't score it any which way it cuts?
Mhm. Um, hmm. Yeah, see, and this is where I'm just like kind of middle of the road. Because initially that strikes me as like, bro, you're cheating. Like, no, you just did.
But
But
this
I
isn't a
guess
game that I would buy.
right,
I bought it because I'm like, it's $5 and it's a garbage game.
right. It's not a game that you are going to put on your backlog because it's not a game that you care to actually finish.
No,
Am I
this is a
am I
game I'm
incorrect in
playing
assuming that?
solely
Okay.
as like a caliber. Like, here's the thing: I'm willing to take the points because I bought it, you know. But I'm
Hmm.
also like, there is a part where I'm like, I'm doing this more as like an experiment, like because this is like
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
like occasionally like just dip into these like just trash games,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, from that standpoint, I'm okay with it being a net zero, you know.
well, and we'll run it by
Because it
John
is.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not really when you think of the heart behind, uh, um, excuse me, why you do the backlog beatdown is to actually play the games that you own. It's like this doesn't necessarily get. Yes, it takes time that you would otherwise be beating down your backlog. Yeah,
Mhm.
but it doesn't. It doesn't like add to the backlog if that makes any sense. And
It's
so,
not like I think it's like one of those things. It's like it's not really. I know this is like such a weird thing because it's like you just a little bit ago were like, I want to stop wasting time with mid games.
right,
And I'm like,
right.
I'm going to play some trash.
I want to
Like,
play more. Yes,
I want to play less than mid. I
give
want
me.
to
Yeah,
play
exactly.
actual dumpster fires. Just and
Yeah.
so patrons in the future, one of the things, and again, we will record we'll like in the future. I actually have a trial or a demo of Lord of the Ring Gollum installed on my PlayStation 5. I will be subjecting myself, and you guys, I will like we can farm that for Brohang content, and I'll probably talk about it a little bit on the show proper. I might make a bite sized out of it, but that's actually so that is first up on the slate. But like and here's the thing is like a while ago in the Brochacho Den, I did sort of throw out a feeler and basically say like, hey, um, if if you like what are some garbage games, and I was kind of like farming for ideas, and some of
Yeah.
those were good
Yeah.
and may get worked into, um, but yes, you
Nice.
know,
Nice.
so that's part of the reason. So
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that'll be fun. That'll be fun.
yeah, and it's like here's the thing is like I don't intend on really beating any of this stuff. Like I'm not
Right.
gonna do like I'm not playing this for anything other than just sort of like calibration. Like I'm gonna play this long enough to just be like, oh yeah, this thing is really doo doo. Um, or like, well, in the case of like the Gollum thing, I think it's only an hour or whatever. So it's like,
Okay. Yeah.
but yeah, it's like I think the experiment is kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be fun.
It's also probably going to be like psychologically and emotionally traumatic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've seen things, man. I've seen things. Jeez,
Whoa.
I just dropped my drink.
Oh
That's how nervous I am
no.
about playing bad games. Give me 1 second. I'll be
Yeah,
right
yeah,
back.
yeah. Take your time. I will talk to myself. No, I'm not. Well, I guess I am technically right now. I'm talking to myself, but as I record this, but clearly, obviously, this is like one of those situations, right? If it does a tree, if a tree falls in the woods, does it actually make any noise? And the answer would have to be yes, because you're listening to me right now. Although that kind of goes against that whole idea, unless you're thinking outside of like a space-time deal where you're traveling through time, and so I'm only making I mean, like a Schrodinger's cat, right? Schrodinger, is that his name? Schrodinger, I think it's Schrodinger. um I think it's something like that. Anyways, his cat, does it really exist inside the box, or does it only exist, the quantum inside a quantum box kind of a thing? So this is like a quantum podcast, because am I actually making noise right now as I record this? Maybe, maybe not. Who's to say? Unless it is being listened to by a patron, in which case it does exist clearly because you can hear it, but that's because we're jumping the space-time continuum, because we have recording equipment that can actually analyze the sound waves that I'm making with my mouth or with my vocal cords, because clearly my mouth is only just moving so that the vocal cords can express the sound in certain ways to make certain sounds and certain pitches so that you can actually hear it. But it's really my vocal cords that are doing the bulk of the work. So
Okay, sure.
yeah,
Can I
just
walk in?
quantum podcasting while you were gone.
Quantum podcasting.
Yeah, because I wasn't, no one's here to listen, so so you don't know if I was actually making a sound, except when people are there to listen, then they will know. And so,
You're
yeah.
talking about the cat in the box thing,
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Except in this case, instead of a
which
box, it's a podcast. So
which is kind of interesting, right? But it's also pretty nonsensical.
yeah, it is like insanity, like asinine. I don't get how any of this makes sense.
Well, because it's like the whole argument is on like potential, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
the no, and the reality is the cat exists in a state where it is alive or dead. The only thing is that the data is unknown,
Hmm.
and that's and so it's like this weird. I don't I don't understand that. Like quantum
Hmm.
mechanics and quantum physics, like I'm not a dumb man. I'm also not the smartest man
But I
on the face of
definitely
the
feel
planet.
it.
But like whenever I read like and like here's the other thing. I'm not any even I don't even scratch at like claiming to understand any sort of physics. I mean,
Hmm.
I kind of
Hmm.
like I get the general idea behind some of it, but then it's like they start making up like they start doing weird calculus and algebra devil math stuff, and I'm just like, no, no, part out. Like yeah. But like yeah, quantum mechanics are interesting, but they're also kind of nonsensical. But like the other thing that's kind of weird is that they also kind of works.
Yeah.
Um
Well, there is matter now that we've found. At least this is my understanding. There are certain types of matter that only seem to exist when they're being observed,
yeah.
which is really interesting. Um, yeah, it's almost as if God created it all together. It wasn't just some cosmic accident. But there's that.
Yeah. Yeah, dude,
Sorry, we don't have to go down that road. I was
stuff
I
is
was
so cool. Like
I was just talking about that because you were gone, and I thought it would be
Yeah,
a fun little ramble.
it was, and then you got me, bloviating on my lack of knowledge on and expertise in physics.
Yeah, well, I'm right there with you. I just know the basics, and I
I think it's
know that
fascinating.
Ant-Man got it wrong. Anyways, it doesn't matter.
In theory,
Yeah,
there
no,
was a
I'm kidding.
time
I'm kidding.
where that was like you could look at that as being scientifically feasible, because basically like the argument is like there's more space in
Mhm.
between the atoms and like the bonds that the atoms create. And
Right.
so if you collapse all of that in on itself, if
Mhm.
basically you eliminate all that space, you should be able to reduce things down to a much smaller, more dense. But it's also yes, no.
Well, yeah, and I'm sorry. I was specifically referring to the MCU movie
Oh,
Quantumania, Ant-Man 3, which makes absolutely no sense. That's what I meant. I
well,
didn't mean just the
that's just
concept of
comic book
Ant-Man. It's
schlock,
fun.
dude.
Right. Right. Yes, exactly.
I still
Well,
haven't seen Quantumania.
it's even I haven't either. I've seen a 6-hour review of it, but I
I
haven't seen the actual
I saw the
movie.
part where they showed like the actual
Oh
Modoc head
man.
dude face,
Yeah.
dude, and
Yeah.
I was like, that
Get
is
it.
the worst possible interpretation of that
Right.
you guys
Yeah.
like of all the things. Like, no,
Yeah.
that's bad.
Yeah.
It's not
And
great.
there's that shred of like how are you supposed to do it? And that seems a near impossible task to take it seriously in live action. But that being said, that was a horrible
That
fail.
was not it.
Just yeah, right,
The
right,
thing
yes.
that they did was not it. A very It's like the uncanny valley thing, only that's like that's just like the straight nope valley.
Yeah,
It's like you took one look at that, nope. Like, dude, I'm telling you, if I was sitting in a room and somebody was, what do you think about this? Nope. Try again.
you're right because it's it's weird, stretched, and like
I
it
would
doesn't look. Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't even know what the story is, but like my thing is like, is Modoc necessary?
Oh no, he's the butt of the joke.
Then
No,
why?
he's an absolute joke. He's
Then
not. No, he's not. No, no. So
then I don't
anyway,
understand. Like, and again, I don't
oh, it's
understand. I don't understand.
it's a dumpster fire of a movie. So
I now
and
I want to see it. It's like that. I want to experience bad things to recalibrate. Like I'm gonna watch Quantumania and be like, oh no,
oh
guys,
my
this thing is
goodness.
garbage. And
Yeah,
I
but
wanted
then
to like it because
uh
I actually I like Ant-Man. I
yes.
think
Oh, the
Ant-Man and the
first one was
Wasp is
good.
kind of like okay.
Yeah.
Like it's
I
not as good, but it's still fun-ish. You know,
I don't know that I even finished. I think I've only seen a few scenes, but
it's not as good as the first. The first one is fun.
right. Yeah, yeah. It was just such a stark difference. It was more like a Marvel movie than it was a standard Marvel movie, whereas the first Ant-Man was like back when Marvel was still taking chances and made movies feel different,
The first
you know?
Ant-Man had more of
But
an identity as an actual
yeah,
movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Anyways,
yes,
yeah,
we
let's
keep saying that. Let's do let me pray
let's
for
do
us and then we will jump right
yes.
in. Okay. So God, we come to you and we thank you for this time we get to spend together. Regardless of how we feel in the morning and things like that. But no, kidding around. God, we do thank you that we get to come as friends, as brothers, and talk about these things, things that may seem unimportant, but God, you have given us an intellect. You've given us responsibilities as well, and we want to steward our time well. We want to think about things more deeply, and we want to think about the um, results that can come from our actions as well as the way in the ways that we play video games, in the ways that we interact, even in the ways that we spend money. So God, I pray that our conversation today would be edifying both to Nate and I tonight as we just
Mm.
have fun together as brothers in Christ, but also to those who are listening. I pray that you would allow them to or cause them just to think a little bit deeper about this form of entertainment that you have given us. And I pray that where conviction is needed to put it in its proper place, that you would do so and use us, God. I pray also, Holy Spirit, that you would keep us from running our mouths into places that we don't need to go, into saying things that would needlessly offend, or saying things that
Mm.
would um just send people down the wrong path. God, we want to be edifying ultimately, and yes, we want to have fun, but really, we want to glorify you and edify our brothers and any sisters who'd be listening to this as well. So I pray that you would help us in our conversation and allow us just to have a good time this evening. So thank you for all these things, and it's in Jesus' name and for his sake that I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Right.
Dude,
Sorry, I get
that
long-winded. I know
no,
it
that's
happens.
not
It
that's
happens.
not bad. No,
Sometimes it's bad, but
eh.
thank
But
you.
I
I
think
appreciate it.
especially like, uh I want to say I feel a little attacked about like
Oh
running my mouth
no.
and down
No, I
into
didn't
the
mean it
no,
that way.
I know. I'm just I yeah. I'm saying that a lot today, but I don't really feel attacked. I'm just like,
Okay. Cuz I mean that seriously. I was not using prayer as a way to make a jab
you weren't
at
doing
you.
like the gossip prayer thing from like youth
Right.
group,
No.
which
No, it
was
was
like, you know what I'm talking about, like
Oh,
was
for
like,
sure.
please pray
Well,
for
yes, yeah. There's that. The other thing. Okay, so as a pastor is like the teaching prayer, where like, oh, I thought you were talking to God, but no, you're addressing everyone in this room, and you're just trying to like tell everyone something. Do you know what I
like
mean? Have
you're
you ever
being
been a part of that kind of
oh no
prayer?
no no I have probably issued that kind of prayer from
Yeah.
time to
Oh, I'm
time.
sure. Yes, I'm
Yeah,
sure that I have as well. But it's just like that one. Not gets under my skin is maybe too strong of a term, but it is kind of just like, is that really the purpose of prayer right now, or should you just like
I just
tell
remember
everyone
like the
that?
prayer requests sometimes in like
Yeah.
in youth
Oh, for
group,
sure.
and I was like, now what I would say is if I were an adult sitting in on that, I'd be like, no, you're
Mhm.
being a petty little snot, go sit in the corner. Like,
Hey,
stop right now. I'm going to interrupt
stop
you
it!
while you're praying.
Stop
Go
it!
sit in a corner and be quiet. Like, you're being a gossipy little brat. Go.
Yeah,
Like, we're gonna just like boop stomp on that right now in front of everybody.
I like
Like,
it.
and if I make you feel bad, good. You should feel bad. That's sin. That's wicked, and you need to knock it off.
Mm,
Because it was like, yeah, but and those things did happen. Like, because
yeah.
believe it or not, the church is full of sinners.
What?
What? Um, my buddy John, and John, you'll probably hear this. We were talking tonight, and we were talking a little bit about some of my experiences as a deacon, as an office holder,
Hmm.
in the church, and he asked about some of the challenges, and I said there is the temptation, I think, especially in the church, to sort of almost behave as if we've got it all figured out, or that like, but like
Hmm.
the fact of the matter is that people are sitters, and they're still busted, still broken, and they're going to do some really messed up stuff from time to time.
Hmm.
um and sometimes that catches you really off guard, especially in the
Yeah.
Church of Christ.
Yeah.
um but yeah, it's just like, yeah, sometimes it's, I think sometimes in churches it can be easy to forget that, and then you
Right.
get like these like reminders like, oh no, we still a hot mess.
Can still be a turd sandwich
this
sometimes.
is this is poop soup. Oh no, do not like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna use this little soundboard and play the theme.
Man, this is so fancy. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm gonna
I wonder how
die.
it's gonna appear in the tracks that I get. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you what though, there's like, I'm feeling that like I'm catching like that nice bass off it. Like
Yeah.
that little
Oh yeah. You mean my phone didn't produce enough bass into the
I
microphone?
mean, sometimes, dog, your phone didn't do squat, period. Like it
You're
just like kind of,
right.
it just got wah. Hey there, backloggers. I don't know. That does not work for me. The
Oh, you don't like
loggers.
it?
That,
Okay.
well, I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm just saying it doesn't work for me.
Okay.
Um, but did I microaggress you right then?
A little bit. You took my loggers. Yeah, that's
And I stomped. I peed in your Cheerios. Is
mm.
that gross? Should I not say that? Should we
Well,
try that again?
I mean, it is a little gross, but I would not if someone literally peed in my cereal, that would not count as a microaggression. That would
So
be a full on, I hate you, and I hope that you drink my urine. That is,
gross.
yeah, yeah. That at least it's
Oh.
sterile, and I like the taste. No, I'm just kidding.
You can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Yes, I'm glad you caught the reference because otherwise I would
Dude,
have sounded like an absolute madman.
I mean, you still sounded like an absolute animal. But I did catch the reference because I too am a degenerate. And ladies and germs, welcome to another episode of the Backlog Breakdown. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nate, and I'm joined almost always by
Mm.
my friend and brother in Christ, Josh Brocklow. I mean,
Hey, hey,
obviously,
hey.
no one peed in your Cheerios today,
No,
so
no, no one
that's
did.
no one macroaggressed you. Um,
Yes, that's true. Not even any of my children. In fact, my youngest child is potty training right now. So praise the Lord. She has not peed in my cereal either.
excellent.
I didn't have cereal this morning, but even if I did, it has not happened so far in my life that any of my children have actually literally peed in my cereal. So
This is a
we're
weird
doing good.
tangent, and I did not mean for us to go down this road, but I've actually so Byron, he's not quite ready for potty training.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but when he does, I remember hearing somewhere that like you just
Hmm.
put a Cheerio on the back of the toilet to help them aim or something like that. Like,
Huh.
but I don't, I don't remember where I heard that. But now that we're talking about peeing in cereal, and I actually said
Hmm.
nobody peed in your Cheerios, like
Yeah.
yeah, this is really weird. And it's come full circle, and I think this is where we just need to leave this thing to die.
Yeah.
And really,
This
it
may
has
not be the episode to recommend to your friends because we start
oh,
off right off the bat.
but I mean, let's be honest. If we didn't chase you off,
Mhm.
and you're still listening at this point in time, we promise that it might get better. We
Mm.
guarantee nothing, except that there's the opportunity to get a little better.
Mhm.
And listen, we don't always get into potty humor, but when we do, it is the choicest of potty humors. That's
Mhm.
what I'm saying. Like it's the best potty humor, you know. And
Uh-huh.
that's my terrible Donald Trump impression. Um,
I like
I
it.
wish I could do a good one because I just wish I could do better impressions of like people that deserve to be made fun of. The
Mm.
only impressions I
Yeah.
can do are like Kermit the Frog, really,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I can do a little bit of a Mickey, but
Oh, nice. Ho ho.
the haha hot
That's
dog.
pretty much all. I like it. I like it. Well, speaking of hot dogs, how has your past undisclosed amount of time since the last time that we conversed on this podcast?
I
How
think
have you
you're
been
asking
doing,
me.
man?
That was a very, very roundabout way of asking me how
Mhm.
it's been since we last spoke.
Yeah,
And
that
normally I like to ask you first, but since
that's
you
true.
you did sort of take like the roundabout kind of way, I'll go
Mhm.
first. And we actually did have hot dog night in the McKeever house tonight, um,
Oh, hey,
which
it is
um,
related.
we got the Nathan's beef franks,
Okay.
um, and we got the good Pepperidge Farm hot dog buns, like the top sliced ones.
I
We got
remember
some
Pepperidge Farms.
John Pepperidge Farms remembers. Um, you just threw me off. My brain is a meme bank. Um, but then we got some Johnsonville smoked sausage, pepper jack smoked sausages. Did some baked beans, mac and
Ooh,
cheese. Like yeah, we take hot dog
nice.
night seriously. I even got some like chili sauce, diced up some onions. Yeah, chili
Okay.
dogs with mustard and onions. That's
Sounds like a good night, man. That's awesome.
it's hot dog night. It's like it's mystery meat and nitrates. It's what
Hmm.
growing bodies need. Um, but yeah, no, things have been okay. We had the weather here in Western Pennsylvania has just been an absolute train wreck. Also, there was
Okay.
an earthquake on the West Coast today out by Philly.
Yeah.
Like
Uh-huh.
a friend of the show, patron
Odd.
Big Chill, actually was near. There's a fault line in Pennsylvania near New Jersey, and I guess Big Chill and like my sister lives kind of out that way too. Like, but yeah, they got hit by
Hmm.
a 4.8 on the
Whew.
magnitude earthquake, and that is big spookums
Hmm.
time. But I you know, in the Dear Critic chat, Alex was saying like, I think I just experienced an earthquake, and I was like, huh, what? I did the Tim what is that?
Uh?
Oh,
Tim the Toolman Taylor?
yes, the
Yeah.
Tim the Toolman Taylor. Oh, um, but yeah, uh, we're doing pretty good. Byron is teething again, so like this kid,
Hmm.
he had a follow-up appointment. His ears are good, but now he's teething again, and he's a miserable nightmare mess.
Ah, yeah.
I was up with him, like we put him down last night for a few hours, and it was like 10:30, 11 o'clock. He was like started fussing and crying. And so I just brought him down, and we slept on the couch. My
Hmm.
cat actually at one point in time decided to use me as a pillow, and Byron
Oh,
is like
no.
flopping around the whole time, and like he would
Ah, one of those.
like so he'd start out on top of me, and then he'd just like sleep. He'd like move to like a part, and then he'd start to fuss, and like I'd wake up and I'd have to move him, or anyways. And so like I'm trying to do that, and but she's sleeping on me, and eventually I'm just like, and I just scooped her up, and I like yeeted her a little bit, not hard, but like I was like, you got to get off me, cat. Like, like he's crying, I'm
Hmm.
exhausted. So
Yeah.
yes, um,
Wow. I'm honestly surprised you're here.
yeah, harrowing. It was absolutely harrowing. But no, I mean things are okay. Like I said, the weather's been insane.
Yeah.
It was really nice last week, and then this
Hmm.
week it's like rain, sleet, snow,
Oh,
like
okay. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like looking outside my window, and I was like, oh, it is actually snowing. Last week I was in shorts. This is awful. Uh, but
Yup.
all that being said, we are doing all right. We're upright. We're breathing. You know, warm beds. Good food, good company. So it's like
Hmm.
it's kind of like God is very generous to us, and we try to remember that. But yeah, we're doing all
Cool.
right. We're doing. How are the Broccolos? I want to know how it's been
Hmm.
with the Broccolos since last we spoke.
Ah, yeah. Well, it has been quite the ride the past couple of weeks, especially just kind of the lead up to Good Friday and
Mm,
Easter, and all the preparation and stuff for that. And things went really well. Like I'm really happy with and we've gotten lots of positive feedback too, especially of
how
how
did your
we.
Tenebras service go?
Yeah, it went really well. We did a few just different things. I wanted it to feel different because it's not a Sunday morning. And so I wanted it to be, yeah, just to feel different, to kind of shake you out of just kind of the normal idea. Just the idea was to put you there, you know, along with the disciples, along with Jesus on his, the day before and up until his crucifixion. So we read scripture and sang songs kind of in between the scriptures. But some of the songs not everyone was familiar with, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay because it wasn't a Sunday morning service. It wasn't always necessarily about singing the songs, but sometimes it was just about listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fun. There were some things that I played with too, because it was just Samantha and I that led. Samantha's an amazing singer, and
Mm-hmm.
so I played acoustic guitar on a lot of songs. One of the songs I had a pad, so I do this thing where I have a pad playing that I can fade in and out with a volume pedal, with a foot volume pedal. So I've got that going through some of the songs. I'll fade it in and fade it out. And one of the songs, I just had this minor pad playing, and I played Cajon for What Wondrous Love Is This. So that one was a lot of fun to just have kind of the really percussive feel to that for a few verses. And then I did also get a little keyboard and hooked up another laptop that I have with a program and played organ
Did you
through.
guys record this or like
I
stream this or
did
anything?
for my own sake. We did not stream it. I asked our team if they could just hit record on the camera just so that I can like check it
Mm-hmm.
out later. So I do have a recording of it, but it is not public anywhere. But I've got it on my drive just to take a look at it.
I,
It's not
I I'm curious, friend. Like this
okay.
sounds very cool.
Yeah,
I kind of want to check it
hey, I
out.
mean, yeah, I'm sure I can upload it and shoot you a link if you're interested. It's not like the mix, the house mix is different than the what was
Then
recorded,
yeah.
so you don't get much of the pad in there. But and you can't really hear the readers who are reading the scripture very well. Some of them weren't talking into the mic. Some of the mics
They weren't
weren't loud.
closing in on the mics the way they needed to
You
well
right,
to get
right. Some
picked
of it
up
was that, and
for.
yeah, yeah, because you could hear them in the room,
Hmm.
so things like that. And then I also burned incense during the service, just
Whoa.
because. Yeah, I know, because I wanted to try something. I checked with the lead pastor and with Samantha as well. I was like, is this too weird? Like, am I just because I want to do something different? And we've been going through Exodus as a church on Sunday
Hmm.
mornings. We're actually just finishing it up this Sunday, the last few chapters. And one of the things that struck me a few weeks ago as we're going through the tabernacle and what God commands, for the Israelites to make, one of the things was this bowl of incense. So this incense was always burning. Of course, you get other smells in the tabernacle because you're also offering grain offerings. You're offering the sacrifice to animals as well. So of course you're getting the smell of barbecue a lot too. But to think that, like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, there's this incense going in the tabernacle. So again, I was just like, hey, I'll try it. I picked up from Amazon some frankincense and myrrh incense.
Okay.
And yeah, because I figured, that would fit the theme of the
Yeah.
crucifixion too.
Yeah.
So I had that going, and I will say I received mixed feedback because I heard from someone that they were like, I didn't really like that, and then a couple people were like, no, it was really cool. I like the smell, and it was just different. Because that's really what I was trying to do, was like, let's just do it different so that so that you recognize what's going on, as opposed to having it feel like
Hmm.
something you've done before, if that makes sense.
Well,
So
and there's a little bit there where it's like because it's not a Sunday morning service,
right,
so you
right.
can be a little more. This term has like a negative connotation,
Mhm.
and I think in some ways right, but you can be a little bit more performative. Um,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and I mean, maybe some people would disagree with me on that. I know, like, there's some guys who really hold pretty tightly to the RP, and they might get
Right.
their their knickers in a twist over some of that stuff. But I think that's
Mhm.
pretty cool. Also, what Wondrous Love Is This is that's an S tier hymn. Um,
Mm.
so well done,
Yeah.
sir. Like the back when Mars Hill did the music, one of
Mhm.
the Mars Hill bands did a version of What Wondrous Love Is This that used to be
Oh,
pretty phenomenal.
interesting. I'll have
It
to go
gets
back and find that then,
um that
'cause
um oh daggone it, there was a mix that you used to be
mhm.
able to find. Let me see. This is the best radio. I didn't mean to throw you off either, but I
No,
was
that's okay.
just
I
like,
was no, because this is gonna be cut out in the free feeds, I was just really happy with how it turned out, and it was fun to be, to try something so different and to stretch myself even musically a little bit. A little bit. I wasn't,
yeah,
great at everything, but I had, like 4 or 5 different things in front of me, which was super fun to kind of mess around with.
no.
So I'm
But
I'm
just
really
for
happy with
your benefit,
it.
the Mars Hill Music Worship Sampler,
Okay.
um, it's on Apple Music, so I don't know
Okay.
if you
Okay.
use that one or
Cool.
not. But it's Kenosis is the
Okay.
band that did the version of What Wondrous Love Is This.
Okay.
Um,
I will check that out.
there was also and it's not on here, but one I think Kenosis might have done a version of We Have Not Loved You As We Ought, or have
Okay.
not loved thee as we ought, which is
Mm-hmm.
like that hymn is like one of my favorites. It's also a
Mm.
kind of a weird hymn. It's a
Okay.
little, it is not hitting like we have not known thee as we ought is not a hymn that I think gets a lot of play, but it should,
Yeah.
because I think it's like it's real good. It's real
Nice. Nice.
good.
Well, anyways, so I feel like I've taken up way too much time just talking about that. But
But yeah.
the whole Easter weekend went really well. It was a lot of work, so this I feel like this week was kind of recovery from that,
Yeah.
just because it was jam packed with good stuff. And I was talking with the lead pastor, Buddy Keegan, and I I told him that like it feels good to wear yourself out doing something
Mm-hmm.
like for lack of a better term, just productive, like
Mm-hmm.
really going after it, spending a lot of energy and then being worn out. There's a sense of satisfaction that comes with that kind of weariness as opposed to just a weariness of like, oh, I spent 12 hours in bed, and I'm still tired kind of a weariness, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
No. Yeah.
so it's been good. But yeah, we're doing good. And then this week we got our roof replaced. So that was something that we've been needing to do for a while, and
Mm.
now it's done and we're happy. So we're doing good. That's how
Yeah.
I've been.
Yeah. We gotta get the roof guy out here.
Hmm.
Gotta get ours done. Um,
Nice. Well, we
hopefully
went.
our tax return will cover it.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome.
That's
That's
that's what
awesome.
that's what we're hoping. That's what we're hoping. So,
Yeah, don't let anyone charge you 70K for it. So
oh, dude, if somebody rolls up with that kind of quote, I'm gonna laugh at them. Just be like, "Get
do
out of
it.
here, dummy!"
Do it.
Like,
Uh,
did I ever tell you about the time? Have you ever heard of? Okay, and I know this is a weird aside, and I will try to make this brief. But have you ever heard about the renewal by Anderson?
yes. Oh, yes. Hmm.
We
Yeah, because
had
they're
those guys
everywhere.
come out, and like, so Anderson windows are like top of the line. They're amazing
Right.
windows. Renewal by
Right.
Anderson is like kind of like their budget brand, which is also just prohibitively
Oh.
expensive.
Hmm.
I believe that's how it works. Anyways, so one day, one of these kids is like walking around the neighborhood, and I said, "Yeah, I need new windows." Come, and I know that again, Anderson windows are good windows, and so
Hmm.
I was like, "Yeah, okay." So we come and they run us through this like 3 hour sort of like talk. At which point
Right. Yep.
I'm like, my guys, like I know, and like
I'm not feeling
so
very renewed right now.
I am not. I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, and like I'm just like that. I'm hitting a point where I'm like, I need you guys to get out of my house because I'm like getting
Right.
tired of this. But
Yeah.
then I was like, okay, like they were like they all these like the bells and whistles, and we're talking about it, and then
Yep.
they dropped the price on me. It was like $47,000
Yeah.
to do all the windows. And now we have two big, like kind of like base, like we have two very large windows in the front of our house.
Okay. Okay.
And I looked at them and I said, "Are you insane?" I said, "Guys, my house, my mortgage is like $75,000. I am not
Okay.
paying you half of my mortgage, more than half of my mortgage for windows."
Yeah.
They're like, "Well, let us crunch the numbers," and they said, "Well, if we don't do the big windows, then it's like 27,000." I was like, I
Mhm.
said, "Guys," I said, "I'll tell you what. If I fall backwards into a pit of money, I'll give you a call.
Yeah.
Until then," I said, "I just wanted some information. You guys have been really helpful. I
Mhm.
appreciate your time, and but I can't." "Well, if we sign you up," I said, "No, I can't." And
But
they
you're
and I
not
said, "If
going
you
to
go any
sign me up.
further, you're gonna get no, I won't." So I
Mhm.
said, "I think, again, I appreciate your time. But it was like, my goodness,
Yeah.
like that whole thing was just like, it was like, it's pretty cool. And if I was
Hmm.
building a brand new, like if again, if I had tons of money, I was building a brand new house, I would want them to do the windows,
Sure.
you
Yeah.
know. But my house is not brand new,
Hmm.
and I am not spending. Now my house is worth
That
more
kind
than
of
that, but
money.
those windows would also cost more.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I'm still
Yeah.
not paying them that for
That
no.
that's something.
No,
That's something.
I like kind of looked at him. I might have thrown up in my mouth a little bit, but I was like, "You guys are out of your
Hmm.
mind."
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Anyways,
Yep.
but enough. You know, we've kind of there's been a lot of rambling about, and it's
Hmm.
been good to catch up. You know, it has been an undisclosed amount of time since we last talked. Um,
Yeah.
roughly about 2 weeks. You know,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's been well. It's been roughly about 2 weeks since we last
Yes.
spoke, but we have other things to talk about, and you
Mm.
know, we don't want to be doing this all night. I mean, frankly, I love talking with you, and
Yeah.
you know, but we should probably kind of keep things moving along. I'm saying this
I
mostly
like
to
it.
myself, not to you, you know, but you know, it's time to talk about the things that we've been into. Um,
Mm.
I think it's time to talk about the backlog report.
The backlog reports, where we report on just a few things. The best of the.
The best of what we've been into lately. So,
Hmm.
you know, couple of things, like a couple different pieces, the two or three pieces of media that we've been into over the last couple of weeks that we really
Hmm.
think are sort of worthwhile and that we want to share. So, Josh, why don't you kick us off? What have you been into lately, my friend?
Okay, so few things that I have been into. I did listen to a book that came off of that came recommended from when I took that course a couple weeks ago that I talked about on the last podcast through the denomination that I'm part of, and it is a book by Gavin Ortland. It's called "Finding the Right Hills to Die On," and it's basically about this idea of theological triage, which is basically how important are certain theological topics and how important ought certain theological topics be to you and to stay unified with other believers. Now obviously we're all unified in Christ if we're a
Hmm.
believer, um but there are certain things that we also divide over, right? We can't worship together if in general, um they've divided into denominations.
Hmm.
People have divided into denominations in order to seek peace,
Hmm.
over different views of different things. And so the book basically lays out some guidelines that Gavin uses, to determine how important certain theological topics are. The first half of the book basically just kind of lays out his guidelines, gives you this idea of what theological triage is, and then how he determines these things. And then the second half of the book is kind of just putting it into practice for a number of different, again, theological topics. That he addresses. So something like eschatology versus your view of baptism, your view of communion, and other things like this. So I found it to be pretty helpful overall, even if I don't, obviously, I don't agree with him on everything here, or even in the book. I thought it was a nice, concise book. And I really liked that practical part of it as
Hmm.
well, that it wasn't just, hey, here's this thought of how you do things, but also here's what I've come to on these specific topics and
It's
why I've come to that. So,
it's almost like teaching, if really
hmm.
effective teaching is not just the mere distribution of information, but also
Hmm.
examples of how to rightly apply aforementioned information. It's
Yep.
weird. It's weird.
So strange. So
That's
strange. You'd think
bizarre.
we'd know that.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
no, that is helpful, and I think, like, you know, I'll probably check that one out. I would
Hmm.
imagine, like, I like that idea. I think that's probably something
Hmm.
that I probably just do, where it's like,
Right. Right.
but I think that it's a good idea. I think one of the sort of like the sticking points, or the hardest parts is, I don't think a lot of people are able to and I'm trying to be like appropriately categorize
Mhm.
and prioritize different areas of like theology. So, like, in the examples that you mentioned, eschatology is a tertiary issue for the
Mhm.
most part. I'm not saying
Mhm.
it doesn't matter, but for the most, and maybe it's a secondary issue, right? But
Mhm.
it's a non-essential issue. Like, you can have a you should, in theory, be able to have two very different eschatologies and
Mhm.
still be able to worship with those people. Whereas,
Right.
like, you have people who disagree on how baptism is applied, on like on how a communion is applied and how it
Mhm.
actually works. Like, those
Right.
are significant enough that we actually have to divide over for the sake of peace.
Mhm.
And those are still brothers and sisters, like, but
Right.
yeah, and it's like here's the thing. I could worship at a Baptist church
Mhm.
gladly, comfortably. Like, I could even in some regards probably be a member or a congregant.
Mhm.
Um, but if they told me that my son's baptism wasn't valid, I'd look at them and be like, "You're wrong." Like,
Mhm.
and I'm not trying to be dismissive or angry, but it's my understanding. And again, I think like the biggest thing is like one of the things there's always, when it comes to any sort of theological distinction in knowledge, there are a few things I think are really important. And again, I don't mean to hijack this, but
No,
one,
you're good.
we have to make we obviously believe the things that were like, so I believe that uh reformed theology, specifically reformed Presbyterian sort of like soteriology and all of that outworking, is the proper or the best theological conclusions available,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Meanwhile, you believe that a reformed Baptist perspective is the best theological conclusion. So we believe these
Mhm.
things to be true, and that does put us in conflict, right? There is a way to say, like, I believe that this is the correct answer, but I also know that I'm not always right, and
Mhm.
that I could just be misunderstanding things. So there's that side of it. The other thing is that if I am right, if we have made the correct theological um you know distinctions and suppositions, that we don't do that on our own power. That is thoroughly, you know from tip to tail, stem to stern, there's a gift from God. And
Mhm.
so, like, the thing is, like, even if you are correct, there is no room for arrogance in that. um
Mhm.
so it's there's these two things. Make the assumption that you could be wrong, you know like, to be charitable, just say like,
Mhm.
hey, no, there's room there, because
Yeah.
we're humans, we don't understand perfectly. We live in a fallen world. There's a lot of reasons that, and again, not to say that you doubt why you believe or what you believe, but
Mhm.
you just understand that, like, hey, like, I think that I'm right because of X, Y, and Z reasons, but I also know that I could be wrong. I could be misunderstanding. I don't
Mhm.
believe that I am. But even if I am right, that's solely by the grace of God.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think that's always important. That's always important to stress that whenever we're talking about this stuff. That
Yeah.
even if it's a strong enough division, like, there's a way to be charitable in that. Anyways,
Mhm.
so yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds like a really interesting book. I wouldn't mind checking it out at some point.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a short little read. I would say just before moving on, just kind of I guess, minor spoiler for the book. But what I find or found even was really helpful is basically if I could boil it down into one thing, and this is not doing it justice, but at least kind of the guiding principle is how close does the theology or this specific topic tie into the understanding of the gospel. And the closer it is to your understanding of the gospel, the more important that
Hmm.
this topic is. And so, like we mentioned kind of with eschatology, well, that doesn't necessarily overlap with your understanding of the gospel. So it's not one of the most important things. But something like even communion, with the different views on communion gets a lot closer to partaking in the body of Christ, and the blood
Hmm.
of Christ. So something like that. So, anyways, yeah, I thought that was it was a good book. It was a good book. I've even recommended it to other people who've enjoyed it as well. So, yeah, Finding the Right Hills to Die On by Gavin Ortland. So some other stuff that is not anywhere near as important or anything like that is just some stuff that I have been watching recently. And like it seems a lot of the internet right now, my wife and I were searching for something to watch, and she got a trial of Discovery Plus so we could watch Quiet on Set, which is a docu-series on
Was that
basically
the Nickelodeon
Nickelodeon.
one?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
Yes. So, yeah, it's man, I've got a lot of thoughts and we're not going to delve into it. I try and be as even keel with documentaries as possible. Um, because
because
I try what's
the
that?
fact is with a documentary, like
Mhm.
even though it's supposedly like it's mostly sort of informative kind of thing, there's still like some artistic licensing, like there's still like a narrative or an agenda
Right.
that is
Yes.
being
Yes.
pushed. So yeah, you
Uh-huh.
have to be a little discerning in that.
Yes. Yeah,
Hmm.
and you hear people's sides of stories and you want to emotionally if you're an empathetic person, you want to side with them. I mean, this is what scripture says, right?
Hmm.
When someone, the first
Mourn
person
with those
comes
who
and
mourn,
Mhm.
rejoice with those who. Oh, and then there's yeah, you were specifically thinking about the proverb, the person who presents their case first.
Mhm.
It seems right, but then the other person speaks up,
Right.
and yeah.
Right. And so when I watch documentaries and especially on stuff that I've never actually like looked into myself, I try and come up with opposing viewpoints. And so like the thinking, how did these things gel together? And so for a little bit, it was only 4 episodes, a few interviews and a few things like that. I'm like, okay, you could have been misreading certain things. Maybe things weren't as bad. Maybe these instances weren't as bad as the way that this documentary is excuse me, is presenting things. And so there are a number of those types of stories throughout the docu-series that I felt, yeah, but there are some things you're kind of downplaying that you did. Um, it, sorry, that even saying that makes it sound because there are a number of different allegations. I'm speaking particularly to um, certain hand waving or the forms of abuse that are not sexual. Okay, um, because I because then you get into victim blaming and stuff like that. That's gross. Um, but what I'm saying is that some stories throughout the docuseries, I'm like, okay, that could have just been a misunderstanding or misreading of the situation.
Hmm.
But then you go further into it and things get worse. Now there are a number of different characters. It's not all centered around a certain character. But at the end of the day, um, and this was after my time. I didn't really watch the shows that are being talked about
Hmm.
in this docu.
No,
Also, I
neither
didn't have
did I.
cable growing up.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but at the end of the day, it's made me think about just even the idea of child actors, and how like is it even possible to ethically like create this world because there's just right it's ripe for abuse from either parents, like we've read that book, the
Jeanette
Jeanette
McCurdy's
McCurdy.
book.
Yeah.
Yep.
So whether it's parents or whether it's other people on the set, whether it's other people in the production, things like that, just
Or
adults
just
and children,
yeah, or
and
just
children don't know.
corporations abusing
Yeah,
their employees.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, like, in this particular, like, dude, I think like Jeanette McCurdy's book
Mhm,
really kind of like keyed me into just like, and again, it's you've got to sort of like, there's a lot of like parsing through, but just the
mhm.
idea that like, as a general rule, children in Hollywood and children in show business is a terrible idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Because of course children want to be liked, and
Mhm.
have the spotlight on them. But they're also children and they don't know what's best for them. And so you need to like champion, and you need to have protective adults. That's parents. That's what we're here for. So
Have you seen
yeah, man.
the stuff on, and I know that you're not super online, but the guy who played like in iCarly, he played like Spencer. He was the older character.
Okay.
He's been making the rounds lately as
Hmm.
basically like he would basically kind of like insert himself, like get in the way
Hmm.
between the producer and the three kids.
That's
Like, and people are
that's
like,
awesome.
no, this dude is like an unsung hero.
Yeah.
Like, and there's clips of him, and he did it in a
Okay.
way that was kind of like disarming and like
Yeah.
very, but like he would often just like, if he wasn't, even if he wasn't filming, he would just go and
Hmm.
be on set to be like that buffer. And
Hmm.
I'm like, that's awesome,
Hmm.
but it's also sad that you need
That's
somebody like
needed.
that.
Yeah.
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 That
Yeah.
that dude felt like he needed to be. Anyways, I've just been
Yeah.
seeing stuff go like out around about him.
Okay.
Sort of like people are like, here's a clip of like when he was just basically like, you've kept us here for like hours beyond,
Hmm.
like these kids need to go home.
Yeah.
And like he's doing it in a way that is like not super confrontative, like it's very sort of
Hmm.
like disarming, de-escalating, but it's
Yeah.
also like, hey, maybe it's time to send the kids home, kind of like maybe
Yeah.
maybe we just need to be done today, kind
Hmm.
of thing.
Yeah.
um so
Yup. So we watched through that, and yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, it's gross.
it's
But
tough. I
yeah,
mean,
right.
I probably, here's the thing is like, I'm morbidly curious about that, but honestly, like
Hmm.
Jeanette McCurdy's book kind of left a big enough like sort of like stink
Yeah.
around the whole thing that I'm like, I just think I'm probably going to find out more stuff that is just going to make me say, oh, this whole thing is gross and needs to be burnt to the ground.
Yeah. So I'll say in some ways the docuseries was not as bad as I thought it was gonna be, and in some ways it was worse. Because like overall, I would say it was not as bad. Um, but there are certain stories, certain things that happened that were, oh boy, no, this was horrible. Um, so yeah, it's not okay. So I'll say I'll go on record to say, the kind of the big expose that this is supposed to be is over Dan Schneider, who's this producer, of all these different kids shows, and
Hmm.
apparently he was just a absolutely horrible a human being. And yes, he did some
Really
things.
skeevy, gross things.
Yeah, yeah. And he shouldn't have been producing kids TV. Like, yes, but he didn't also personally do a lot of gross stuff that I kind of would have expected out of Hollywood, out of being around
Hmm.
kids. And he did seem to have some of the kids' best interests at heart in certain moments. But he was an abusive jerk to a lot of the adults. Um, so I don't take that as like, no, he was not as bad as the thought. I'm just saying he wasn't
Yeah.
a total skeevy, slimy sleazeball to children that I assumed that this whole thing was going to be about. But there are other people that are, oh boy, like, yeah, it was hard to watch. So yeah, in some ways it's better, in some ways it's worse, and it just makes me feel like this whole thing is a bad idea. Get kids
It's,
out of Hollywood.
yeah.
So,
This whole thing
uh,
needs to be burnt to the ground.
right, right, exactly, exactly. Uh, and you think weebs are degenerates? Maybe
Oh,
we
they
should just
are.
go
It's just
watch
like they're
cartoons because
like,
I don't want
dude,
children.
weebs are garbage. Um, I saw a little like Instagram reel where
Mhm,
it's this prototype, like just an archetypical weeb. He's got a sword tucked into the back of his shirt. So
mhm.
we're talking like this is like S tier weeb. Like this
Yes,
weeb's
yeah.
stench has to be amazing.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
and he's like quoting some things about like, some people want to get bent out of shape about like falling in love with waifus or something like that. And then it's like, kind of like go F yourself, bleep. And I'm like, and then he turns and he like kind of does this like little, it's supposed to be intimidating, but I'm like, my
Mhm.
guy, I'm gonna like throw some soap at you and watch you shriek. So like, why don't you like turn it all the way down? Like take that sword out of your shirt collar, and it's just like it's like one of those things where I'm just like, dude. So yes, but that's a different type of degeneracy. That's
Mhm.
like it's like there are categories. Like it's all gross, it's all degeneracy, but like some of it is worse than other bits. Anyways, like
Yeah.
I'm not trying to go in too hard on the weebs. I'm just
Yeah.
saying like some of them are nasty. It's nasty. Anyways,
Yeah. Well, we can talk
we
about
can
some of
move along.
the media that you're into, and maybe can people can make their own judgments.
Hey,
But
hey,
I will say
hey, hey.
I will say the final piece of media was something my wife and I last night, after watching all that stuff and everything, I wanted to get a little bit of a palate cleanser, and usually we gravitate towards comedy, but I wasn't in the mood for comedy, and so I
Mm,
turned on an old TV show from the 70s. And I'd only seen a handful of episodes, but I like the show. We watched the first episode of Columbo on Peacock. If you're
mm.
familiar with it, he's a
Yeah.
detective, or an investigator, excuse me. And
He's a
man, it is just
PI.
so much fun. Yeah, it is so much fun to watch because he plays dumb. That's kind of just his shtick. But anyways, I didn't realize that for that show that the episodes are basically made for TV movies. They're like an hour and 15, an hour and a half for
Mm-hmm.
each episode. Um,
I
and
Was it that way? I think maybe it's like maybe in the service they've combined two or
okay.
three episodes because I feel
Hmm.
like I feel like I watched Columbo when I was a kid and they were not like hour and a half long episodes. It was more like they do like the standard 25-30 minutes or whatever,
Okay.
and then you would sort of like wait to see what happened next week
Hmm.
kind of thing. But I could be
Okay.
wrong. It's like I said, I was not a huge Columbo fan as a
Yeah.
kid,
Yeah.
and but I do remember seeing episodes. I just
Hmm.
so that
Yeah.
would be interesting. But yeah, no,
It's a good time. And it's just fun to watch Peter Falk. Man, that he's great.
well that and he and RC Sproul are
Mhm.
just it's uncanny how similar the two like a younger RC
I
Sproul and Peter
agree.
Falk. It's just
Yeah.
like, huh?
Yeah.
This is the same
Yes.
person.
Uh-huh.
Corporate needs you to tell the difference between these two pictures. It's the same picture. It's the
Yes.
same thing.
Exactly. And there's something about just that era, just the way everything looks and even sounds that's just it's just real nice. It's something like, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. It has that kind of feel of just like an older,
Hmm.
film. And yeah, it was good. So we really enjoyed it. I don't know how we'll probably be off again on again with some of the episodes, but we enjoy that quite a bit. Columbo. Do you want to report on a few things before we jump into video games?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
What you got?
will. I will pull up mine. So as far as books, I'm still like I've kind of hit a point where it is really hard not to stall on the Faithful Executioner. It's like
Okay.
that book got real heavy, and it's like I'm not trying to get too
Yeah.
graphic, um, but it's heavy, and so it's like I listen for a little bit,
Hmm.
and I'm like, I can't do this right now. I just
Yeah.
can't do this right now.
Gotcha.
Um, so there's that. I did wrap up just some like mindless fantasy, fantasy, fantasy schlock,
Fantasy.
got
Final
fantasy,
fantasy.
final fantasy. Um, anyway, that's ugh, ugh, uh, ugh. I have feelings about what we just did. Um, anyways, uh, I haven't. I've been meaning to go back to the Two Towers, but I've kind of just
Okay. Yeah.
that's fairly, but I haven't done that. So it's really just been listening to the Faithful Executioner, and kind of
Okay.
like just like giving myself plenty of breathing. It's like I only have a couple hours left in this book and I just want to finish it. At the same
Yeah.
time, I'm like, this kind of just hurts me a little bit. Like it's
Mm.
just again, there's just a I think there's the one thing that I'm really kind of like taking away from this book is that I think there's a weight to justice that we take for granted, um,
Okay. Yeah.
culturally. That, and again, you know, I'm not advocating for cruel and unusual punishment, but
Mhm.
it's like there's a story about some highwaymen who did some really atrocious things, like
Mm.
ripping a child out of its mother's womb and
Oh my
butchering it in front of,
gosh.
like, and it doesn't get like, it doesn't go into
Whew.
detail, but just even that in my head, like that story, it's just like the recounting of the facts just
Yeah.
like kills me, right? And then I'm hearing about this woman who left her 15-month-old daughter to starve while she
Mhm.
went on vacation for 10 days. And I'm like, that woman
Mm.
needs to be executed.
Yeah.
Like, that is willful, that is murder. She murdered her child in a slow, but anyways, and I'm just like, I'm thinking about it, and it's like we don't think about the weight of justice and like what it really means to be just.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's kind of one of those books that it's not an easy read. Um, but yeah, it's so like, listener beware. um, like if I would recommend the book, but I'm also saying like it's not fun. It's heavy and it's hard, and it's going to make you ask questions of yourself that I don't know that. Yeah. So there's that.
Mm. Yeah.
But I haven't really been like, that's really kind of like outside of just like general podcast junk. Um, I've been watching More Delicious in Dungeon, which is a total pivot in mood. It's
Okay. Yeah.
still delightful. It's still charming. Um, it's just it's got like it's just got good vibes. It's kind of fun. Um, it's like there's just a wholesomeness to it that I really like. So it's a really kind of cute show. It's got like some quirk and charm that I'm really digging. Um,
Nice.
the last thing, and I didn't put this in the notes, but it's like you mentioned that you and Sam are watching Columbo. Megan's been
Mhm.
watching this show, and it's like one of those things where I will step in and kind of watch it if like it's one of those shows that like I would not watch this on my own, but if she's got it on the TV, I'm like, oh, I'll pay. It's called The
Sure.
Resident on
Okay.
Netflix. It's
Okay.
like a hospital drama.
Hmm.
It's kind of like Grey's Anatomy. Like, what
Mhm.
was the like this, there was a series of like the hospital dramas,
Oh, yeah.
um
The Good Doctor.
like all that
House.
stuff.
All
It's
that
kind of one
stuff.
of those. It's got a really pretty interesting cast. um it's one of those things that I'm enjoying it, but it's like it's one of those things where like if it's on and I have no idea, I'm just like, what is going on, and Megan will fill me in. It's decent television, the bits and pieces that I've seen. So
Cool.
it's heavy. It does
Okay. Okay.
I mean, and it dramatizes some of like the stuff, but it's like
Yeah.
there's some stuff like where you kind of see like maybe some of the behind the scenes in like hospitals and politics and more of the business side of things.
Mhm.
It's probably a little cynical because like that makes for good television, but
Sure.
at the same time it's like, oh, I never thought about like, you know how like in a disaster ambulances bringing people who need care, like certain hospitals might get preference because they appeal to MT drivers, and that is actually like revenue. That's income.
Mm.
It's like,
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's like, oh, that is a really weird thing that I never thought about in my entire life.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like how, yeah. But that's anyways.
Mhm.
It's interesting. It's not like going to change your life or anything, but like,
Yeah.
hey, if you want a hospital drama, it seems like it's a pretty decent one. But I'm
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
I'm not super invested. It's kind of like one of those things like I like it when it's on and I'll watch a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah, for sure.
but yeah, it's been kind of a light media week for me. I've
Okay.
been playing a lot of stuff lately, which like Josh, we're a
Hey.
video game podcast. So let's talk about the games that we've been playing lately. What have you been playing lately, my guy?
Yeah, so, cruising along in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Man, this one is just gonna take me forever to beat because it's a really long game, and I mean, I play it while I'm on the elliptical. So
100 hours later.
yeah, exactly. So that's the thing is like it's gonna take about 100 hours. I think I'm like 36, 37, 38, somewhere around there. And so I generally get about maybe 4 hours a week just between the times that I'm kind of
So you're
able to
going to finish it
play.
roughly next year.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's how it feels. But also, this game is a bit of a slow burn. So it is very long, but it also takes its time. And so I'm totally fine with it. You know, it kind of stinks in terms of like beating down your backlog, but it does feel like a game. It's so expansive and it's I was going to say it's plodding along. That's not true because it has a lot. I think it's paced really well with the reveals that are happening in the story. I do think it has dynamics, but it has moments of just like, okay, now go explore for a little while, and then you come back into story stuff, and then you're on like a 20-minute cutscene, and there's a lot of those, and there's a lot of talking, and there's a lot of character development. So it is kind of a slow burn game in general. It's not one that's like action packed every moment that you're playing. So I mean, it's kind of fun playing it
Hmm.
on the elliptical and just like, pausing the video or the YouTube that I have going on at the same time or something like that, and just focusing on this cutscene for, 10, 15 minutes. And it goes on longer than I expected it to. But you're getting time with the characters and the development there in the predicament that they're in. Uh, Again, this theme of just the inevitability of death, and what that does to the importance of life and things like that, or it gets into some heavy stuff. And
Hmm.
so I'm very much enjoying it, but yeah, it's still going to be quite a while before I'm done with it. So Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is what I'm focusing the majority of my game time in, when it's my own personal time. However, after our previous episode, we're talking about co-op and playing together. I was thinking about other times that I could play video games, and right now my kids are obsessed with their Roblox, and stuff like that they play on their tablets. And I was like, you know what? I need to be a better dad and get them off that and play some
Get them
co-op
off that
together.
garbage.
Right, exactly.
Get them on some
Yeah.
other garbage.
Yes, a little bit classier garbage, I will say. Get some nice cultural. Teach them about different cultures and things like that. And so, actually, part of it was that I was asked for some co-op games that we could play in our Discord, and so that was a lot of fun getting some recommendations there. But I picked up a game that I wanted to play this year. I picked up this game last year, and it is a kind of a reimagining of a Super Nintendo game that is based on an arcade called
Mm.
Pocky and Rocky Reshrined. And you can play it co-op. It's a little weird. You have to unlock the co-op mode, although I used a code in order, just a series of
You
inputs at the
cheated.
start in order to play co-op. Yeah, because I primarily wanted to play this game for co-op. And this game is difficult. It's sort of like a shooter, but it's unique in the way that you progress. It's not like an auto-scrolling shooter. It's one where you're walking around, you get to choose, where you're going, so you can go at a slower pace, which is kind of how you want to play the game. But it is difficult. It is a hard game, so you will die on the first level multiple times and have to start over. And that was also what I kind of wanted to introduce my kids to, is like playing games from a different era. I talked about we talked about difficulty in video games, and so I was itching for some of that as well. And I got that from this game, and it uses a lot of Japanese. You're a shrine maiden. Pocky is, I can't remember her name in the Japanese, and Rocky the raccoon is not a raccoon. He's actually a tanuki. And
Mm.
some of the unlockable characters are, you could play as Ame no Uzume, which is one of, kind of the higher pantheon of Shinto goddesses, and things like that. So there's a lot of like weird, onis all over the place, and kappas that you fight at different places. So I really enjoyed the game. In fact, I ended up playing it single player because it is, again, very difficult, and it actually affords you some easier things in single player than it does. You have to beat the game in one sitting in co-op mode, which kind of stinks. But you can actually save at different points in the one player mode. So in order to unlock these extra characters that you can play in co-op mode as well, I beat the game on single player, which, again, it's a difficult game, so it took me a bit to get through it. And my kids enjoyed just watching for a little while too, while I was
Hmm.
progressing in the game. And then you basically have to beat the game a second time in order to unlock all of the characters. So I did that, and again, really enjoyed my time with Pocky and Rocky Reshrined. So I beat it, and because I unlocked everything in the game, I'm counting it as completion. Now, does that mean, there's no platinum for it in PlayStation? PlayStation has some trophies, but there's no platinum, and Nintendo obviously doesn't have anything. So I'm counting getting all the unlocks as completion. Although I did not finish the game on hard difficulty, so there's still, I didn't
How
do everything there is
dare
to do.
you?
Uh, but anyways, I'm counting that as completion. So I'm taking a -2 points to my backlog score, which brings me to -5 for the year so far. So
Yeah,
that's what I got to report on.
I'm looking at some screenshots of the game, and
Hmm.
it looks interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
It,
it's got like some of that. I'm looking at just like a screen cap where it's like that. It's got a very charming sort of
yes.
aesthetic.
And that's what drew my kids in as well, is it does not, like, it doesn't seem like a difficult game would look this happy go lucky. Which, I mean, it also, you go to the underworld, you go to, this burning town, and stuff like it. There's some not grotesque imagery, but there is some, crazy stuff that's going on. But it is wrapped in this very cute and charming, um yeah, art style for everything.
Yeah, that's
But
cool.
it's a good time. I really enjoyed it.
Cool. It looks cool. Looks
Mhm.
it looks like it'd be fun.
Yeah, yeah,
What else you been
we
playing?
enjoyed it. That's all that I've got. I
That's
mean,
it.
I guess the only other thing we got from the library, because we finished that game up from the library, and it's funny. I'm seeing games at our local library. Dragon's Dogma 2, Rise of the Ronin are at my local library. I'm like,
Well, there you
these
go.
games just released like a week ago. This is crazy.
Dude, that sounds like
Um,
a great library. I think I need to
yeah,
move
it's
just so I can go to
kind of
that library.
crazy. But I picked up a couple other games from there, and showed my kids, just to ask, like, what's the next co-op game that we want to kind of go after. And so I had Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, and I can't remember what the other one was, and I had Sonic Superstars, and my kids gravitated towards that one. So right now we have that one. We've been playing some levels of that. And you know what? You're giving me the stink face right now. And I
Mm-mm.
understand why,
Mm-mm.
but there's something about just the Sonic aesthetic, and even the music. The music in this game is very, and the sound effects are very reminiscent of old style Sonic. That's just like, all of this packaged together feels very good. It feels fun to play, and so playing it co-op, which is insane, co-op, because you're moving way too fast for any, like, yeah, sane kind of co-op experience. But we're having a good time. We've only beaten a few levels so far, but we're having a good time with that so far. Oh, the other one was Cuphead. My kids didn't want to go for that just yet. So
They didn't want to go for like the game that would just punish you for breathing.
yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, we just beat Pocky and Rocky, so
Yeah.
Cuphead's the next challenge.
Okay. Well, where's that put your beatdown score? I think you already mentioned it, but
Yeah, that brings me to -5 for the year so far.
okay. Wow. You're killing it, my guy. You're killing it, my
Making my way.
guy.
I still haven't picked up anything, so that helps
Okay.
when you don't
I
buy games.
I have not managed to do that.
Mm.
I buy things just because it's like, oh. shiny. Um,
I like that.
so I'm still playing Destiny 2. Um,
Mhm.
man, that game is it's a good time. It's yeah, I just it is really there's a new event coming next week and I'm just like, oh, like I
Okay.
was kind of like winding down and I was like ready to kind of like take some time off, but like it looks like they're going to be introducing like a new mode kind of thing. And it's supposed to be better onboarding for new players. So we will see. We will see. I have no like I'm just like, man, I like Destiny too. I'm
Mhm.
having a good time with it.
Having
But
a good time.
yeah, you know, we're having a good time.
Having
We're
a
having a
good
good
time.
time. We I did beat Gauntlet the other week with Parker and
Okay. Yeah.
Deuce,
Nice.
and I left a little bit of a review, and that game is like super mid. It's pretty
Okay.
enjoyable, pretty like whatever, up until the very end, and then the last boss. Like we were playing on normal, and we were on the last boss for like we probably like a half hour, which
Mhm.
maybe 45 minutes, which I'm like, this is entirely too long for this game. So
Gotcha.
I noped right out of that. I turned it on to easy, and then we went and just stomped on the boss. Um, to which I say, like, that's the thing is like Parker and I could pretty comfortably two man that game
Mhm.
for most of it, and then we get to the final boss, and he's just like, "Let me body you. I'm just going to absolutely like you guys are going to get absolutely rinsed here." And I'm like, "Oh, that's not." There's a lot of like design, and mostly I feel it's like a weird spike in difficulty combined with the fact that the game is not super responsive. It
Mhm.
doesn't feel like it does. Like it's like if you want to do that, give me like tighter controls, like give me a better dodge, like
Yeah.
stuff like that. But whatever. It's Gauntlet. It's done. That's a -1.
Okay.
Um, so what did I do? I knocked something off my score, and I
Mhm.
immediately turned around, and I had a little bit of like credit sort of sitting in my PlayStation wallet. I was like, oh hey, I played an hour demo of the game Balatro, and I really like that game. Let's just burn like 15-20 bucks on that, and I picked it up using some of the gift card money that I've been sitting on, and oh
Okay.
boy, that game. Watch out, folks! Like it's if you, all I'm gonna say is like if you like the same kinds of games that I do, um, it's very dangerous. Like
Okay.
I it's very much got like that time machine factor where like there was one night I was like I'm gonna play this for a little bit, like, and then it was like 2 hours later and I'm like, oh crap, I need to go to sleep now. Like
Yeah.
it's very good. So the positive one, yeah, still it puts me back to I was down to -1. Now I'm back up to
Mhm.
or I was down to +1. Now I'm back up to +2. Um,
Okay.
and then I've kind of been targeting some smaller games on my backlog that I either started and haven't finished or just I've been meaning to get around to. And so last night I had started playing TMNT Shredder's Revenge a while ago. You had been talking about how you played it with your kids and you
Yeah.
guys kind of rolled through it. So Parker jumped on with me last night actually, and we just kind of like slow rolled through the rest of that game. I was about halfway through, and we just kind of rolled through the end of the missions, and that's definitely like a game that I'm going to keep around, and like if anybody from the community wants to like hop on and do like a TMNT night, like I'm game. um it's a good time. So it's fun. It's a very very good brawler. The only thing I
Mhm.
would gig it for is that frankly I think like it's technically a little basic. I would have
Okay.
liked to have a dedicated button for punch and a dedicated button for kick. Um,
Mhm.
like, and I feel like you could have done that and then put like special on like a shoulder button, but
Yeah.
you maybe have a little bit more room to get like interesting combos and stuff like that. But it's good. It's just like that's the one thing where it's like I kind of wish you had just leaned a little bit more into just give me like a little bit more because most of it is you're just jamming on square,
Mhm.
and occasionally. So yeah, I mean it's not that simple, but it kind of also is. Um, so yeah, but had a good time. So takes me
Yeah.
back down to -1 or +1. We also last night Parker and I were hanging out, and before Byron decided to wake up and be a fussbutt, um, we fired up Evil West, and this is like
Okay.
one of those games. It was a PS Plus game a few months ago. It's primarily a single player game, but there is a co-op mode. You have to like play through the tutorial to unlock the co-op mode, but so we're just kind of like firing we fired it up last night. We rolled through a mission or two, and it's a game that has some interesting chops. Like the combat
Okay.
is good, pretty good, not great. It's got a really cool atmosphere. It's an Unreal game, so it's got like a really, it's got really good visuals. It's one of those things where I'm like, we're enjoying it, and it's like, it's a Western, and I like cowboy games, but this is like cowboys killing vampires kind of thing, which is um, I don't know. We're pretty early on in it, but what I've seen so far is pretty enjoyable. Um, yeah, so it's like yeah, it's got like a 75 ish in sort of like Open Critic and Metacritic circles, which so far I'm like, oh yeah, I can kind of see that. It's not great, but it's enjoyable, and as a co-op experience, it's kind of like okay, just slow rolling through that with him. So I guess this, oh, and this is you have alluded to a certain. I'm playing a game that is way outside of my
Mhm.
wheelhouse, and there's a
Mhm.
reason for it, and it's not just because it is a shorter game. Like I think How Long to Beat has completion at like 8 to 10 hours ish.
Mhm.
Um, it's a genre that I'm not super comfortable with. Like it's not a genre that I spend time with at all. Really, with rare exception. I mean, um, and it also came recommended from a guy who likes the genre and who I kind of I value his opinion. So it's a game that I got on PS Plus years and years ago, and it's called Hodoful Boyfriend. It's
Mhm.
a visual novel game where you are playing a girl who's going to uh, she's a transfer student into a school of sentient pigeons, and it is unhinged. Uh,
Yeah,
and
it kinda sounds like it.
I already technically I've rolled credits multiple times, but it's like one of those things where to get like the true ending, you have to basically unlock all the different ending types. And the initial playthrough takes like 20 minutes, maybe a half hour, um, maybe a little bit longer than that because like you're reading all the dialogue. But now I'm just kind of like ripping through the dialogue that I know, and then it's like I make my decisions. Um, the guy Ty Guy Travis, he's a freelancer over at IGN. Travis Northrop. Um, he at one point in time on SG Bitcast, somebody was like, "Hey, we know you're into visual novels. Like, what would you recommend?" And this was one of the ones that he recommended. And I kind of jotted
Okay.
some of those down because it's like I have some. This is a genre that I don't have a lot of experience in. Um, and he mentioned this game, and I was like, "Okay, I have that. That's weird. This is a game that, for a lot of reasons, was probably never on my radar." But it's like I said, it's kind of like this
Yeah.
trifecta where it's a shorter playthrough. Like I already had it in my library, and then there was this sort of like Ty Guy Travis was like, "Hey, this is an interesting visual novel," and I'm like, "Okay, I guess." And so
Mhm.
yeah, I'm playing a visual novel pigeon dating sim, and it
Mm.
is exactly as weird as it sounds, and I make no excuses for it. It's just it's one of those things. I basically checked it out of sort of like morbid curiosity, and
Mhm.
it's a quick enough burn that I think I'm going to go for a completion on it just to
Okay.
see. Because I've heard, here's the thing, I've been doing my best to try and not spoil this game for me, but I've heard that if
Okay.
you do like unlock all the other endings and you go for like the true ending, there's a pretty massive pivot, like almost Doki Doki Literature Club esque.
Okay.
And so I'm
Yeah.
like, if you can sort of like, that was a game that like really got my attention. That's actually a game that I might double back and like try and get the platinum for, um, as well.
Okay.
Cause I think
Yeah.
like that wouldn't take, but like that was a game that really kind of got my attention. And it's like, if you can if you can hit on a similar level to as that, like, okay. So it's one of those things where it's like, this is weird. Yes, but all I'm going to say is like Wes and I had a little bit of a conversation prior to the last bite sized where I'm just like, I talked a
Mhm.
little bit about it's a weird game. It's a very weird game. And I'd say that I feel bad about playing it, but let's be honest, I have no shame. So that being said, where I'm sitting right now as far as my beatdown score is like I haven't I did, like I said, I did manage to beat a couple of games off the ballot. I also, oh, real quick, I almost forgot. I
Mhm.
did start playing Gato Roboto on my Switch again,
Okay.
which dude, if you like Metroidvanias, keep an eye
Mhm.
out for this one. It's like
Okay.
it's supposed to be like a short little burn. It's You're basically playing a cat who gets in like a robot sort of suit, like, and yeah, it's it's charming mechanically. It's pretty interesting, and it's supposed to not be too long. So I've been playing
Mhm.
through it. I had I'd started it I think last year actually, and it was like one of those things where I kind of stalled out because there was a boss fight that was like really annoying me. And then
Mhm.
I went back to it a couple nights ago and I was like, oh, or like last week, and I was like messing around with it. I was like, oh, this isn't, it's like one of those things where it's like you just come back and it's like, oh, why was I having problems? Like, this is a little annoying, but it's like my brain made it worse than it actually was. So,
Yeah.
so,
Gotcha.
but all that being said, my beatdown score is sitting at +1. So I do have some movement at this point in time. But that being said, you guys know what's coming next. It's time for us to we've been talking about the backlog beatdown. You guys know that this is the meta that we run all year, where we basically encourage the people who are playing along to buy less games and prioritize playing
Mhm.
this stuff that they already own and haven't already played. Um, but none of this makes much, like, all of this. We bring up all of this because the official app of the Backlog Beatdown is the GG app, which is the letterbox style app for your video game collection. Charles Watson, he's a buddy of ours. He's been working on this for a number of years. It's got a really kind of robust little like tool set in there. You can see what your friends are playing. Josh and I are on there. A lot of the friends, like I think Micah uh, is still on there. I'm trying to think. I think John O'Spark still on there? He might be. I
Pretty
don't
sure,
know
yeah.
that he's really playing anything lately, but a lot of the guys that we reference and have been on the show or whatever, like they're all in there. They're all on it. You can see what some of that. You can see what Josh is playing. You can see what I'm playing. You can rate and review games. Both the games that I beat recently, I did a little write up for. I rated them. Um, and you guys can go see what I thought of them in a little more detail. Spoilers, it's pretty much exactly what I just said when I was talking about them. The other thing is you can create custom lists, and that's really primarily how we track our scoring. It's one of the ways that we track our scoring for the beatdown. So Josh and I both have a list for the acquisitions and the games that we actually play. Um, Yeah, and it's like it's free 99. So if you
Mhm.
haven't jumped on it, if you haven't checked it out yet, we'd really encourage you to do that. And if you like what he's doing over there, you can throw him $5 a month or $50 a year to get access to the elite tier. And pretty much the elite tier gives you a couple of things. It gives you a little more access to Charles. You get a unique role in his Discord server, and you can see a little bit more of the sort of what's coming down the line for GG. You can also opt in to be basically a beta tester for Charles, and you can get access to new builds of the GG app. And again, have a little bit more like input, and be able to like see what's coming down the line a little bit more. Um, that being said, like I said, we like Charles, we like the GG app, and we think it's something you ought to check out. Other things that you should, well, you're already checking out and possibly throw us money. It's us. It's this podcast. So, guys, like most podcasts out there, we have a Patreon. Um, and we really want you to think of it as a bit of a tip jar, but it is a tip jar with benefits. Um, so you can get early and uncut, like our patrons get early and uncut access to each and every episode. Sometimes it's not that early, but that's mostly because I will wait until the last minute to record a bite sized. Sometimes Josh waits to the last minute too, but it's mostly
It's
my
true.
fault.
It's true.
Um, but early and uncut access to each and every episode. There's a patron exclusive podcast called The Bro Hang, where it tends to be a little more stream of consciousness. Sometimes there are weird rabbit trails that we kind of postpone. Like we might start them in some of the patron stuff, or we might even start them on the show, but then we actually like get weird. It's where we talk
Mhm.
about like the more unhinged side of things, like, and it's not always video game related. Sometimes we talk politics, sometimes we talk personal preference. Um, so it's kind of a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get, unless well you know us and you know it's just going to be insanity. So there's that. There's also a video feed that our patrons get exclusive access to. In
Mhm.
addition to all of that, so you get all this for as little as $1 a month, right? You are each and every one of our patrons has the opportunity. Now, we would encourage them to do this, but we won't twist their arms. But they can each nominate a topic or a game for us to play and cover in one episode during throughout the year. So some of the
Mhm.
games that we're going to be playing this year: Persona 3 Reloaded, A Link to the Past. Outer Wilds. I think there's a couple other ones in there that oh, Elden Ring is on the list. Um,
Mhm.
so, and those are all games that have been nominated by our patrons. So, if any of that sounds interesting to you, like I said, and you've done the rate, it's a buck for as little as $1 a month. Now, you can give us more if you want to. We won't say no to more money because money's not bad. We will not, however, just come at you and say money, please, because we're not cringy like that. But if you have done the rating and the reviewing, and you have done the sharing and the caring, and you want to go a little bit above and beyond, that's a great way to do it. Um, that being said, last but not least, guys, again, if you've been listening for any amount of time, you know that we are we are glad. Pride is a sin, so we're not proud, but we are glad to be members of the Playwell Network alongside our friends Paul, the artist currently known as the Techno Funk Boy, and Wesley Ray, the Henshin Dad himself. Uh, a former pony and a forever pony in our hearts is nothing new under the porches, Porcho. Um, but these guys, they are all either making or have made content that we really love and enjoy, and we love these guys. And basically you know we wanted to partner with them. So current
Mhm.
Paul's current project is, holy crap, my brain just went broop. Like I have like in my brain I heard like a record skip, like that
Paul's
broop.
Paul's current project. Paul's current project. Paul's
I was
current
like,
project.
I need to actually look at my notes. What the
The
heck?
Thorns of War, a Dragonlance
Holy
podcast.
smokes, Paul! It's not that I actually forgot. It's like my brain just like went. Oh my! Paul's Paul's current. Oh man, you're gonna have to edit that out and post, my guy.
Yeah, yeah, I got
Um,
you. I
Paul's
got you.
current project is the Thorns of War. It's a Dragonlance podcast, which is D&D adjacent, and it's an actual play podcast. Um, it's like Paul is one third of the only actual play podcast that I listen to from stem to stern. Um, so I'm just saying, like, guys, I value his stuff. I enjoy this. You know, I'm a little behind right now. I'm not caught up on Thorns of War, but I do listen to it. Uh, so yeah, check it out. It's good
Hmm.
stuff. We like Paul. We like what he's doing over there. Wes, currently his current project is the Retronym podcast, which is, and he talked about it in our last bite size, but it's kind of a nostalgia retrospective video game ish nerd culture kind of podcast. It's fun.
Hmm.
He does a lot of different stuff. He tackles some interesting topics, and it tends to be pretty like sort of punchy and bite sized. Um, Again, we love these guys. We love what they're doing, and we think you ought to go check some of their stuff out. That being said, here's a word from one of them. Word.
Word. Ba-dum-bum.